What's up everybody, raid testing back on the menu, and today we're taking a look at heroic Dausegne the Fallen Oracle in the new raid Sepulcher of the first ones. Now keep in mind that this is PTR raid testing, so a lot of things can change. So the Fallen Oracle, main mechanic here is Disintegration Halo and the 4 reservoirs around the room. At the start of the fight, one of these reservoirs will be dominated and fire off a Disintegration Halo every now and then, which is a, well, dark halo that travels across the entire room. When you get hit by this, you take a large amount of shadow damage, and you take 500% more damage from subsequent hits of Disintegration Halos for 6 seconds. The only way to avoid getting hit by this is by using a blink type ability or immunity, from what we could tell at least. And throughout the fight, the boss will dominate the remaining 3 reservoirs one by one. Each dominated reservoir adds another Disintegration Halo anytime the boss casts it. So the goal is pretty much to get hit by all halos, but in a staggered fashion so the debuff runs out in between halo hits. And when there's multiple halos going out, you can see which reservoir is going to cast its halo next by looking at the dark swirly bolts and in which order they hit the reservoirs. So when there's 2 halos going out, you want to move to the reservoir that's going to shoot its halo first, and then you can just AFK there and let the second one hit you. When there's 3, you want to get hit by the first one as soon as possible, the second one as soon as the debuff drops, then you can again kinda AFK and let the third one hit you. Now the slower you are at getting hit by the first and second, the more you're going to have to run. And when there's 3 or more halos, like I said, it helps moving into the center of the room just before they start, so you can easily move to whichever reservoir halos first. Other than that, the boss will cast Staggering Barrage, which channels out 3 orbs towards a player, dealing lethal damage split between players in its path or their path. And it also knocks you back. Now, players hit also take 500% more damage from Barrage for 45 seconds. During testing, this debuff seemed to be applied after soaking all 3 or at least the last orb in every Barrage, so the same player could soak all 3 orbs from a Barrage, but just not the next set of Barrage. So you're going to need around 2 to 4 players soaking the line from the targeted player, depending on how tuning ends up. But I doubt you need more than 4 players for it. And the Oracle will also cast Obliteration arc. Boss fires out several missiles in an arc, which deals a ton of damage if you get hit. Now, from what it looked like, she first fires/fills up the arc with several lines, and then fires off the missiles in roughly the same order as the lines in the arc filled up. Like you can see here, the middle of the arc fills up first, and this is also where the first missiles will hit. It seemed to target random players or the largest clump of players, and the boss can cast these during halos, which can make those overlaps a bit tricky. So potentially baiting this cast into a reservoir or out from the platform could make this a lot easier during those overlaps, if it's something that ends up being needed. And for tanks, there's the Infused Strikes, pretty much a taunt on 3 kind of deal. Boss applies the dot with melee strikes that stacks and lasts for 20 seconds. When it expires, the entire raid take a bit of damage based on the amount of stacks. When we tested this, the raid barely took any damage from this explosion, but that could change once it goes live. On top of this, the tank that explodes gets infused vulnerability, which increases physical damage taken by 100% per stack of infused strikes that you had, which might seem a bit weird that you start taking more damage when the boss stops slapping you, but have no fear, there are adds. Just have whichever tank that isn't debuffed pick him up though. So on that note, every now and then the Oracle will spawn a Domination core. Cast Domination Bolt at its current target, this is interruptible, and Encroaching Dominion shoots a few bolts of dark energy that deals damage within 3 yards of their impact and leaves pools on the ground, which also deals damage if you stand in them. Now these bolts seem to be around player locations, so you kinda bait them to make sure they're not all over the place, which pretty much translates to ranged players, don't be spread all over the platform, be near the boss. Try not and drop puddles right in front of reservoirs or center of the room. And lastly, we hop back to the reservoirs once again. Like I mentioned, throughout the fight, the boss will dominate these one by one. During testing, this was always the same order: north, west, and lastly south. East is already dominated when the fight starts. Now, the boss will dominate a reservoir anytime she runs out of mana, and she loses mana anytime she casts an ability. And when the boss runs out of mana, she will teleport to the next reservoir on her list, siphon it, gain a large absorb, and start channeling Inevitable Dominion, which ticks tons and tons of raid-wide damage every second. And And while channeling this, any pools on the ground will also grow in size. So this is where you want to burn it down fast and assign healing cooldowns and all that jazz. And naturally, like I said, the faster you break the shield, the better. So nuke down the barrier, the boss will stop channeling and lose 1% HP every second over 10 seconds anytime you break her absorb. And if all the reservoirs have been dominated, when the boss goes again, she will cast Total Dominion, dealing raid-wide damage, regaining mana and spamming halos. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Updated guides will be out once the raid is out if they need to be updated. And yeah, like I said, it's PTR, so a lot of things can change. If they change the fight and we get to test it again on PTR, I'll make an updated video. Now, if you have any questions at all, hit me up in the comments or become a patron and get access to the Stankie Discord, where you can find raid week auras, notes, and a ton of helpful people for all your progression needs. It's also the fastest way to get a hold of me. On top of this, I'm also streaming all raid testing during PTR, as well as all progression raids on Thursdays and Sundays. And I play with a Swedish guild now for progression, so streams will be a bit in Swinglish during progression. And don't forget the usual YouTubey stuff: subscribe, like, or dislike. Ring that notification bell. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.